Welcome back to the Foster and Adoption Podcast with Nikki and Larry. We are excited about our next guest. He is very special to us.
Very special. Welcome, Cam.
Hello.
What people do not realize is that when you foster, it affects the biological kids too. How do you share your family with other children? Is it easy having new kids come in and out your home? How does a bio child feel?
Tune in and find out from the other side.
The bio child.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Cam, we've been sharing our journey and we really appreciate you for agreeing to share yours. So let's jump right in. How would you describe your childhood growing up in our home?
Our home was busy. I feel like growing up, especially my childhood, busy and strict, a combination of the two. So I feel like there was always something to do because you were always being told what to do, something to do, So I don't know. It's a good and a bad thing, right? Because number one, I feel like managing a home, especially full of children, is pretty difficult. And so everybody has to play their role and learn their parts as well. And then at the same time, you learn to value the downtime or your alone time or whatever. So I think that was pretty cool as well.
I can appreciate that. Do you remember when we first started fostering?
Depends on what you mean by fostering, because we've always, and I would say we've always accepted people into the home, and on various numerous occasions. And I feel like I've always, out of my two bio brothers, I was the one who probably became closest with a lot of those people every single time. And so that, so I guess the question was, do I remember when? I definitely remember when. I remember a lot of details for each occasion. So yeah, it's been, I guess, a whole lifetime full of fostering for me.
Okay, let me jump right in.
Go ahead.
So, if you all recall in our earlier episodes, we explained our journey, and we had a whole journey before we started fostering. So as Cam was sharing, he remembers kids being in and out of our home all the time. Yeah. So might it be someone from the church or someone down the street or someone on the street we met or someone that we picked up.
Family member. Yeah.
Family members, friends. I mean, we just always opened our home to people who needed a place to stay at that time. So some were long term, some were short term, some were young, some were older. Yeah. So we just had a different dynamic in our home at all times. Cam did share that it was a very busy home. Yeah. Even at early age, as we shared, Larry and I got married very young. So we had a lot of energy at that time. So a lot of energy. And we were always in and out and had schedules. So it was ongoing, right, Cameron?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Cameron has always had this just a very calm spirit. So I know even just my energy alone was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Hold on. You jumped in there so fast.
Well,
I wanted you to hesitate for a second.
Just because, it was a lot, but, you go through different phases or seasons or whatever you want to say in life. And so I enjoyed the fact that I was super calm when I was younger, and I did take it easy, and things, that were a lot or in your face or all at once were overwhelming and anxious to me. But at the same time, my shift, in the last maybe 5-10 years or so, my shift has been exactly what that is, because that's the dynamic that I need to operate, to my full capabilities, right? My full potential. So it was cool to learn how to do all that as a child when I had the room and, I had crutches, alongside me, whether it be my brothers, my parents, whoever, but crutches to where when I would be, not getting stuff done or, too calm or whatever, I had people that could step in and help me. But now because of that example that y'all said, like I said, I learned how to adapt that for myself. And so, it's good to be able to, have possession of both dynamics, I guess, to just turn it off when I need to or when I can, and then have it on,
That's good to know, because we truly appreciate the calmness that you brought into our home.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. I bet.
Yes, you did.
I bet, yeah. Yeah, I mean, everybody, like I said, everybody had their role, but it was a lot being the, because everybody's constantly pulling, and y'all were always pulling different directions, and
Right.
sometimes it's like put the rope down. You don't have to. I'm not finna
Put the
pull.
rope
Yeah,
down.
I'm not. Sometimes I help this guy pull, help this
You can't
person.
save
No,
every
no,
child, huh?
just stop. So
Right.
but those were I feel like those were also moments that helped define the leadership abilities that I have today. Just having the courage to stand up and speak up and say, hey, this is a bad idea, or everybody's being whatever right now, we should all stop. So just that sort of thing.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up because it actually, I recall sharing in one of our earlier episodes that we did give you all when we started fostering. And I recall a conversation I had with you right away, just telling you if you ever feel uncomfortable while we are fostering, then to let us know.
Mhm.
Did you feel that you had a voice in our journey?
I feel like I had a voice in the journey, maybe not so much in the actual decision. And, part of that is being a child. And even though, because, Nick and I don't know if y'all have something planned for him, but Nick and I had a conversation before we started fostering our original three out of our adopted seven. But we had a conversation, and the conversation was us pretty much reflecting on kind of what I just said, like, we understand that y'all want us, to have a voice and y'all will hear us out and whatnot, but the decision is made, and sometimes you just learn how to deal with that. But, it also did help that we were accustomed to that being the case this whole time. And we were, at that time we were experienced. Like I was 11th grade, right?
Right.
Junior year, and, Nick was a sophomore. So we were experienced, and, it wasn't so much an issue at that time.
Right. And I also recall you being in school, and tell me if you remember this. In high school, you all had a project where you were supposed to go out and do, I guess, community service or something. And you talk to the teacher. You're like, I do that all the time. I mean, I'm a foster brother where they wanted you to go out and volunteer and work with some kids. You're like, I do it all the time.
Anything to get out of doing something, I guess. Yeah,
Right.
so that just seemed like a clever idea to
Well,
make the grade real quick.
well, you got the
Yeah.
grade. You
Yeah,
got the
I bet I
grade.
did, because
I think you had to give a presentation or something, and you just talked about your home life.
yeah,
And,
that,
hey.
They probably were like, wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. I think I remember standing up and
Mhm.
reading something about, and like you said, just wow, as a response. But yeah, it's always a cool story to tell because people don't believe you. People don't believe you whenever you say you have 9 siblings. They're like, oh, blah, blah. Then the next thing that comes out the mouth, oh, your mom and daddy was it's like that's actually
You're like, leave that part alone.
it's actually
Leave that
not
alone.
the
Right
It's like, okay, it's 7 words. So,
Right.
Well,
but
hey,
yeah.
was there ever a moment where it was hard for you?
Yeah, I think just throughout the entire journey, like I said, with the seven that my brothers and sisters that we adopted, that's experience wasn't so much hard because of the experiences we had before then. So definitely when I was younger, and I don't think this is something I've ever talked to you two about, but I was close with both my god brothers, Chris and Jordan, and they both passed early to violence, and so that's something that I think about often. And it's not so much like the saddest thought in the world, but if anything, it helped me learn how it helped me learn how to make an impact on somebody, and
Right.
because their situations were pretty tough, and even there was a Christmas where Chris was jealous of the gift that I got versus him, and he was choking me out in the hallway. I still love him, you know what I'm saying,
Right.
and that's just I don't know that well, I already had a strong brotherhood and unity with my bio brothers, but every single life that came in and we got to touch, but and touched us, I still remember them fondly and still have love for them. So
Right.
yeah, I didn't know I'm getting emotional, but
And
yeah.
I didn't either, but just thinking about that is so very important. And we say this so much without that content being behind it that every day matters that you have a child into your home. Every child matters.
Yeah.
And with you bringing them up, where Jordan stayed with us a little over 2 years, almost 2 years, Chris was with us probably 6 months.
Mhm.
And they still weigh very heavily
Yeah,
on our
super
hearts.
heavy,
I
yeah.
mean, and at that time, even with Chris, you were in third grade, I believe,
Mhm.
in third grade, and you still remember that so fondly. And I
Oh, right,
remember
yeah.
that birthday as well. because his birthday was in April that we celebrated, and then yours came in June, and he was still like, wait a minute, but I want this, but I want that, you know, and he got everything he wanted in April, but June is a whole different month. You know, those toys are old by then.
Yeah.
But to realize that both of them did pass early, both of them, and violent deaths at 19.
Yeah.
You know, so just to know that we had an impact on their lives for that 6 months or for that 2 years, that's what fostering is about.
Absolutely.
If you do it through the system or if you just do it through your heart, you know, through the church and through just word of mouth,
Absolutely.
you know, and one of those was a school situation and another one was just a friend family situation, church situation. So those moments are hard, especially as, you know, you reflect and as you brought up their name, then I got emotional because I know the time we put into them and we can never say that time is wasted.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's never wasted because it not only changed them, but it changed us.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, on a lighter part, let's think about when, I'm going to say dad brought like 13 people to our house from Katrina.
That was
How
probably
did you
the
feel?
hardest. That one was probably the hardest because I don't like a lot of people being around, you know. So the house had like 15 people in it, man, and you know, I didn't like sharing stuff, but that's when I learned how to share stuff for real. And you also only learn how to share stuff, but you learn how to keep your stuff as your stuff, you know. So, hiding place, you know, or let's put it here and let's keep the hiding places mobile, right? Like, bro might go under the bed next time to look, so let's put it, you know, somewhere else, right? And stuff like that. But yeah, that was a crazy experience. It's definitely. All the experiences, you know, up until the last one is something that in the moment you might not always enjoy, but it definitely has, you know, a huge impact on you because, you know, there's, that one was.
But talk about the cooking though. Come on.
Give it up
for the cooking.
Well, Tim was who I was thinking of when
The
it comes to because Tim who I was thinking of when I'm talking about mobile hiding spots because you know Tim was and you know, man, even in just like we talking about with Jordan and Chris, their situation, you know, out there in Kennemer or wherever they were, that's a completely different life. And so the way, you know, Tim operated, you know, you it's like we taught them a lot, but they taught us a lot, right? Because Tim was sneaking and get the cookies at night. And, you know, we didn't know who it was for the longest time. And you would never know who it was because they were going in the dead of the night. You know, the cookies would move him around, would change places, and he would just get it. And it would look like he didn't touch it, but, you know, cookies are, like the bag is in the same exact position it was beforehand, but cookies were missing, and you know, games went missing, toys went missing. That's what you learn how to deal with it, but you know, and then Tim, you know, he's also the type of dude where like he'll come clean, like, oh, you got me, man. Yeah, it was me, man. Yeah, here you go, man. I don't want the game back. You know, so, but yeah, it was cool. And then, but it was also cool, you know, because man, we started doing a lot at nighttime too, as a unit. You know, when y'all would go to sleep or whatever, and so. Right. We also saw how, you know, Tim would be handled by his cousins and stuff. And, you know, they would know immediately, it was Tim. Yeah, we're not going to do this, and that. So, you know, they get into it and stuff. But, man, that was just a whole time. It was theatrical, you know. It was, right. It was something you can't make up. Yeah, it was like a sitcom. Yes. You can't make some of that stuff up, man. It was funny, but.
And all boys. Too.
All boys,
all boys. Yeah. That's all we had, all boys.
You know.
So, what was that, about 10? Yeah, it was 3 of y'all. It was 5 of them,
Tim,
and then the shells too.
Oh
so,
yeah.
So we had it was 10 boys, just y'all all under. I think the oldest one was like 5th grade. Yeah.
Well,
so we had
10
boys. Yeah, 6th grade. So 6th grade and under.
Oh 10. No, 7 because I was in 4th grade.
Okay, so you're in 4th.
Yeah, because me and Fat went to school with me in my grade. Yeah, in
my
class and
stuff. That's right.
I had to explain that. It's like it's hard to explain that stuff.
People like,
you know, we
it's your cousin. Everybody was just cousins.
Yeah.
Everybody just cousins.
Right. Well, we was at Lake Ridge, and they kind of believed we was
cousins.
Yeah. They ain't know no better. They ain't know no better.
So that was fun times, different times for us because we hadn't had that many in the home at one time. Mm-hmm. You know, and even adults. Right. So that was fun. It was a lot of good times because there was a lot of good food.
Yeah, it was.
Excellent food.
It was.
Excellent food. And just was able to foster relationships.
Yes.
Because even once they moved out, we were still family.
Exactly.
You know, still family. If we saw each other today, still family.
Yeah.
You know, and I think at the time that I shared this, we shared the story of bringing in the people from Katrina. Actually, Fat had just called us.
That's
And
right.
we had just had a conversation with Fats of
Yep.
just, him calling to just say, thanks for being there at this time.
Yeah.
As he grow older, you all start reflecting,
Mhm.
so that was a good time.
Yeah, it was.
You
Yeah, it
know,
was.
so we appreciate that, just the reality. And when we started this episode, I didn't even think about how many. I was just thinking about fostering and adoption, period, not even the pre-fostering.
Right.
Yeah.
You
Her
know,
whole ride.
and
Yeah.
I also shared, and I want to get your perspective on it, that during this time that we were fostering, it did get really heavy in the home.
Yeah.
And where, when our foster children did not respect women, and I was the woman in the house.
Mhm.
And I recall you being upstairs and hearing that conversation back and
Mhm.
forth. And I believe at the time Dad was out the home, or he was out working, or in the back or something. But you had to come down as their older brother and
Mhm.
say, look, this is not how we speak to her. We're not going to do this. Do you recall having a conversation where you had to step up and protect?
Yeah, absolutely. And there was, I mean, stuff like that has a boiling point. So there have been a few occasions or whatever situations, and it's funny to think about that. Because I do think back to that often, because that same person now is the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's like you said, you just gotta trust the process, but the process is annoying and it's tough. And I was ready to work my hands that day, but I think you told me, not to go back upstairs, this and that. So it's I'm glad it didn't come to that. And, me and him also, we've come to blows, outside of that, and stuff like that. But it's just part of growing a relationship, and
Right.
me and my bio brothers had those
Right.
issues, so it's just,
Right.
when
Be
it,
brothers if you did.
yeah, when it comes to dudes, man, it doesn't matter what type of dude you are. You can be a soft dude, a hard dude, tall, short, whatever, big, round, small, you're gonna have issues with, your brothers
that's a-
around
that's a
you,
part of
your
growing up.
cousins, your brother,
Right.
whoever. You're
Yeah.
gonna have issues with them, and you just I'm like,
Right. And I brought that up because also we talk about in this fostering space that sometimes you have to make hard decisions.
Yeah.
And you have to make decisions that others might not understand. Because we told you, Cameron, when it gets to that level, then you need to let us know and
Mhm.
trust us as your parents, that we're going to trust that this is your home. No
Mhm.
matter how many people we invite into your home, then it's still yours and you have a say so. Now, I cried all night when you said, well, Mom, it's just time for him to go. I mean, I literally cried all night. And your dad would tell you. And we started getting on the phone and we made different arrangements that, yes, he left for 30 days,
Yeah.
but he still came back on the weekends. We still kind of saw him, to keep that connection. And before he came back, I asked you, how did you feel about him coming back in the home? Or you okay with it? Now, I was praying that, Lord, please just let him say yes. Please let this boy come back in the house. How can I not, let him come back in? But I know that's something that not only as we pray as parents, but as a child, you pray too.
Mhm.
And that you wanted the best for the household. And if you allowed him to continue disrespecting me as a woman, then it was going to trickle down to everyone else.
Yeah.
So it was hard, to do, but it was something that sometimes you have to do. But if you question what I'm talking about, if you go back in the previous episode, you're going to hear where we talked about making that decision and getting with another foster parent that knew that they were just going to have them for a little while and then they're going to come back. But it all worked out, and God just made different provisions for you to be okay with the decision for him to come back. And when he came back, how would you say y'all relationship is?
Well, it's a lot better. It's night and day now. And I remember because I on one hand I needed time to cool off, and also time to see that his younger siblings needed him.
Right.
And that's why when you say that, just thinking about the betterment of the household, that's a part of it too. And so it's selfish of me, to come to that with y'all because that's how I felt in the moment. But at the same time, we did need that wholeness. But I know that he also got to be in a home that, he said they was stealing his deodorant, and what he said he got to, and it's funny. It's just funny how God works, because, I was charging him up, a few weeks before then for stealing my deodorant, and lying about it. I'm like, bro, it's my deodorant, our rooms are conjoined, right? So I hear when you can,
Baby, come get my room.
but for him to tell me that, I think he was complaining to you, something like that. I'm just like, that's crazy, because he got his deodorant stolen. That lady didn't care or whatever, and it was just a tough foster home for him to be a part of. So,
Right.
I think he
It really
learned
was.
quickly, and that, she was a woman and she was in charge. So it's like,
Right.
you kind of just, get slapped in the face with reality at times. And that was a good one for him. But our relationship nowadays, man, it's a lot better.
Right.
And, it's to the point to where, in some regards, he's the one, being like, hey, we haven't spoken in a while, or hey man, I
Mhm.
called you, you never called me back. And I'm real bad with, responding. So he'll be one of the first ones. That's why all the other kids, that's why, they'd be like, oh, Cam bad with his phone. Because Tyreek, let them know a while ago
Yeah.
that, but Tyreek is, he's the best with communication and
Mhm.
making sure that everybody is knowing where everybody is at all times, and also that we're also, taking the time out to, stay in touch with each other and everything. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that about him. And yeah, our
Yes.
relationship is much different
Mhm.
than what it used to be.
And I think he really did come back. Like you said, God just has a way to
Yeah.
shifting things the way that he wanted them to be shifted because he came back as an advocate.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, kids, they
Yes.
couldn't even say anything to
That's
be
true.
crazy
That's true.
Yeah.
without him
He shut
stepping
it
in.
down.
Actually, he did. Yeah. Oh, who was that with the seat? Oh no, that was beforehand
That
with the
was before.
seatbelt. Yeah, but
Mhm.
yeah, it was different. I do remember him though telling somebody to make sure they keep
Oh
their
yeah, to
seatbelt.
the seatbelt on. I mean, just everything.
Listen,
Hey,
yeah.
what did mom tell you to do?
Yeah,
Didn't
exactly.
she tell you to do this? And even though it was Miss Nikki at that point, Miss Nikki said, go now.
Yeah.
He was just really quick on it and helping out and making sure
Yeah.
that things, happened quickly.
Yeah.
So
So tell me this: what do you think that people don't understand about biological kids? Being in these situations.
Nah, I guess just how flexible and adaptable they have to be. Because there's it's just gonna be a completely different dynamic shift than the home that you're accustomed to. And home is like, especially for in a good home and a good family, like that's your safest space. That's your favorite place more than likely. And so having that shift and having, to share that, it just hits you in different ways. And, you just have to be flexible, and be ready to
That's true.
adapt.
I agree
Yeah.
with you on that.
Yeah.
now you were different ages as we
Mhm.
had different kids coming to our home. Now, if you could speak, and we have children that watch our podcast, we
Mhm.
have foster parents that's watching, we have adopted parents, and even those that's thinking about it. So if they have biological children, and at that time we had three, and you were in the middle, what would you say to that parent or that child about fostering with biological children?
Just be mindful of how much patience it's gonna take. Because on one hand, the bio child can go through a plethora of different things. Like I feel like between Nick, Larry, and I, all our reactions and emotions and experiences were completely different. And you might have a situation where a bio child could be jealous. You might have a situation where a bio child could, think he's a Doberman and protecting the household. You could have a lot going on. So you just have to be patient with that. And, as for the parents, I feel like I can't speak too much on that end, but I know one thing you guys did do really well was kind of like we spoke on earlier. It didn't feel like we had a say in the decision, but as far as the process, the journey, we definitely had a voice, and y'all honored that, and it was able to help out. So
Thanks. We appreciate
Yeah,
that.
yes.
yes.
We tried, and you all taught us a lot going through that process. And I know that we talked about it, prayed about it before we got children. And it's funny because even though we were taking all these other kids in
Yeah.
just randomly,
Yes.
because it was never planned. It was
Yeah.
just coming
Yeah.
home and introducing you all to another child.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Definitely.
Just bringing a child home with you.
Yeah.
Where when we began to foster, we actually talked about it.
Yeah,
Right.
it
And
did.
we
Yeah.
prayed about it, talked
Prepared.
about what
Yeah.
age and so forth, so it was a lot of planning into that. Now, quickly before we wrap up, talk to us about what it's like and what do you see your role as an adopted brother?
Oof. I mean, it's the same, bro, just multiplied. But I within I guess the original trio, the bio trio, I was in the middle, like you said. And so Nick and I are close in age, but as I got older, I saw that Larry and I are also close in age. So it wasn't too much of a dynamic in terms of just the age differences. But starting with them, that definitely taught me a whole lot about just example and you know, I I would recall even some situations I'll respond to. I would just recall ways that Larry will respond for me, and you just try to be an older brother in that way. So I guess that's the biggest thing. Biggest difference was just learning how to be an older brother for sure. And,
Right. Right, and we always deal with a lot of boys, but we have these two girls in our
Girls.
house. How is it like? Is it different from being a big brother to the boys,
I think
big
it's
brother to the
easier.
girls?
It's
Think it's
yeah, because so number one, as a older brother, when they were a lot younger, we just had a close relationship. Or what it was kind of superficial. I mean, we're our age different, so
Right.
we're not super close, but we're close. And then as they get older, it's just the age dynamic is different. So now the relationship is still close for me. They just, they're teenage girls, so they just
Oh
act like
yeah.
it's not close, and that's perfectly fine with me. That's not something that I feel like with the dude, I gotta get in their face. I gotta, have them come clean. I gotta interrogate them because
You
it's
big brother for
yeah,
real.
it's
Right,
it's
right.
like more than likely whatever you're doing that's incorrect. I've done that. Let me tell you about that,
Mhm.
or what you're doing is correct. Hey, great job. I've probably done that or done something similar. Let me tell you how to keep that going. But when it comes to girls, I'm hands off. So my job is, just call us, if you need us, right? Stuff like we're not even at that age yet, so
Right.
barely, so yeah, it's hands off. I don't have any, I guess, any quarrels with having sisters. Now I enjoy that part. That's the easier part.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's the easier
And
part.
that was new to us, having
Yeah,
with the girls in
I
the house.
figure,
That
yeah,
was
yeah.
new,
And
fun, and
I
fun.
saw some adjustments from
Yeah.
y'all and stuff, and
Oh yeah, we had
yeah.
to just.
kind of like how Nick is with Liv. I saw, he got that from dad with, the girls because they come to girls. Like I said, you can kind of intimidate a younger guy,
Yes.
man. But girls, it's like you gotta talk to. you gotta
It's
have
a different
conversation.
type of patience.
Yeah,
It's a different
yeah.
type of patience.
Because they have responses, and the responses kind of make sense, and it's like, all right,
Right. Let me let you do you.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
let me know
okay.
when you need me. Type.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
good. Well, one thing we can say as your parents that we've seen you step up in so many different ways. Just being that big brother that they can come to and talk to. And then just being there throughout the whole time. You've been very solid through every child that we brought into the home. Just being there, letting them know that they're accepted. And that's one thing that we hear from our children, that they, felt comfortable. Now, I would love to say that they were comfortable because of dad and I, but we heard from our child that they were comfortable because of you all,
Right.
because of our brothers accepted them in.
Mhm.
Was it a time that you shifted to figuring out, wait a minute, these kids are staying. They're not leaving.
Yeah, I
Did you?
think I'm trying to think. Because I know I was at UTA for that year, and I
Uh-huh.
think that's when they got adopted. But it was kind of. I'm trying to think when it really sunk in. Because I guess I always knew from the moment we started fostering our seven that that's the route it was going to go. And I think if you
Right.
remember, I was advocating for that route, because it just made a lot of sense. But I think it really sunk in whenever Imagine and I were in New Orleans and we had Jaleel come stay with us for a couple years. I know that was years later, but it was
Right.
like,
Yeah.
because I was doing my own thing for real, with Imagine and I, and we were starting a life together, and so having my younger brother come and stay, it was like, well, that was the full circle right there.
Yep, I
Yeah.
agree with you on that.
Yeah,
Right.
'cause-
That was real.
Yeah,
That
you're
was
doing
real.
you're
Then
doing
it's
your
like
own
he's here
thing.
forever.
Yeah. And that's probably how y'all felt when you
Mhm.
had Uncle Buck or Ainette or whatever staying with y'all for a little bit.
Right.
It's just that same thing. Okay, like I'm starting doing my own thing, planting my roots, and I still have my siblings, and they're a
Right.
part of that.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
Man, speaking of which, man, that's wow. Thanks for reminding us of that, or me of that. Because people probably already remember that off the top of their head.
yeah,
No, you're solid for that. We
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's not something that you had to do, but you opened up your home
oh yeah,
in a completely different city where you were
Mhm.
still new to
Yeah.
it, and you just
and we
you
had a
embraced it.
good time. Yeah, we had a
Yeah.
good time.
Oh,
Yeah, and that earned me some brownie points with Imagine, because.
Right.
And she thought I was like a mean older brother at first, because they was all younger, so she would come visit the house over here. They'd be doing something, and
Just have to tell them what
I
to do.
pulled
Come
everybody
on.
aside. They start doing, I'm gonna try to do. She like, you didn't have to. I'm like, well,
Oh, you have to. There's too many of them to let it slide.
She know now. She know now.
You have to. So good,
Yep,
good.
Yep.
Well, once again, thank you for being open
Of course.
with us. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing with you. I know that, it's not always easy to
Yeah.
welcome people into your home and to share your mom and dad, but you all always made it easy.
Yeah.
So we do thank you for that. And we just appreciate the time we have here today with you.
Of course, no problem. Glad I
Hey.
stopped by.
Yes.
Yes, sir. We appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for tuning in to our Fostering and Adoption podcast with Nikki and Larry. Please like, share, subscribe.
We enjoyed you meeting our son Cameron here today. Cameron, thank you for being here once again.
Of course, thanks for having me.
And you all remember, no matter where you are on your journey, if you're fostering, if you're adopting, just remember that your biological children, they're on a journey as well. So be patient and have fun through this process. Thank you.
Bye.